Elena adjusted her son's small backpack on her shoulder while clutching his tiny hand. The 6-year-old boy, Matteo, clung to her as they entered the towering glass building downtown. The lobby smelled faintly of leather and polished wood, with walls covered in modern art. To Elena, who had spent the last 3 years working double shifts in cafes and convenience stores, it felt like stepping into another world, a world she desperately hoped to join. The position she was interviewing for wasn't glamorous. It was an executive assistant role at Rodriguez Enterprises, one of the largest real estate development firms in the city, but for Elena, it was a chance at stability. A steady paycheck, health insurance for her son, and a chance to prove she was more than just the single mom everyone reduced her to. But life, as always, had complicated things. Her babysitter canceled at the last minute, and there was no one else she could call. She had stood in her small apartment staring at her son, debating whether to cancel the interview, but something inside her screamed, "You can't give up again. You've already lost too much." So she buttoned her secondhand blazer, packed snacks and crayons in Matteo's bag, and prayed someone in that shiny skyscraper would understand. Inside the 17th floor reception area, Elena introduced herself timidly to the sleek receptionist. Matteo hid shyly behind her legs. The woman's eyes flicked toward the boy and then back to Elena with a thin, disapproving smile. "You have a child with you?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Yes," Elena said softly. "My babysitter canceled last minute. I didn't want to miss the interview. He'll just sit quietly, I promise." The receptionist's eyebrows rose. "I'll let the hiring manager know, but this is highly unusual." Elena's cheeks burned. She led Matteo to a chair near the corner, whispering, "Color your dinosaurs, okay? And be quiet." He nodded solemnly, sensing his mother's nervousness. Minutes later, 2 women in tailored suits emerged from the office corridor. Their heels clicked like hammers against marble. One of them, a woman in her 50s with cold gray eyes, introduced herself as Ms. Ortega, HR Director. She glanced at Matteo, then at Elena, her mouth tightening. "Ms. Rivera," she said, her voice devoid of warmth, "we were expecting you alone." "I understand," Elena said quickly, her palms sweating. "I'm truly sorry, but I had no other option. Matteo will be no trouble. He'll sit quietly while we talk." The other woman, a younger manager, exchanged a look with Ortega and smirked. "This is a corporate office, not a daycare. We need employees who can prioritize work." Elena's heart sank, but she kept her back straight. "I can prioritize work," she insisted. "I've managed multiple jobs, cared for my son, and I'm ready to give everything I have to this position. I just need a chance." Ortega's eyes narrowed. "If you can't even arrive at an interview without distractions, how can we trust you with executive responsibilities?" The words cut deep. Elena felt heat rise in her chest, a mix of shame and anger. She opened her mouth to respond, but Matteo shifted in his chair, dropping a crayon. It clattered loudly on the floor, and the younger manager sighed exaggeratedly. "I think we're wasting our time here," she said. Elena's vision blurred with unshed tears. She stood, reaching for Matteo's hand. "Thank you for your time," she whispered. She was ready to walk out, her dignity in shreds. And that was the moment the elevator doors slid open. A tall man in a dark suit strode into the reception area. His presence was magnetic, commanding yet effortless. His deep-set eyes swept the room, and conversation seemed to falter in his wake. Elena didn't recognize him at first, but Ortega's stiff posture gave her the answer. Alejandro Rodriguez, CEO of Rodriguez Enterprises. "Señor Rodriguez," Ortega greeted, her voice suddenly syrupy. "We didn't expect you back so soon." Alejandro's gaze flicked to Elena and Matteo, curiosity sparking in his expression. He stopped, hands in his pockets. "What's going on here?" Ortega cleared her throat. "Just a candidate. Unfortunately, she brought her child to an interview. I was explaining why that's inappropriate." For a moment, silence stretched. Elena's heart pounded. She wanted the floor to swallow her whole. But then Alejandro crouched down, eye level with Matteo, who stared back at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Hola, campeón," Alejandro said gently. "What's your name?" "Matteo," the boy whispered. Alejandro smiled. "That's a strong name. Did you draw these dinosaurs?" He pointed at the coloring book. Matteo nodded shyly. "This one's a T-Rex." Alejandro chuckled. "Impressive." Then he straightened, his gaze locking on Elena. His voice carried authority but not judgment. "And you are?" Elena Rivera, she said quietly. Alejandro tilted his head. You were here for the executive assistant interview. Yes, sir. Ortega quickly interjected. Mr. Rodriguez, I was about to dismiss her. We require professionalism, but Alejandro raised a hand, silencing her. His eyes never left Elena. Did anyone actually interview her? Ortega hesitated. Well, no, then we're not dismissing anyone, Alejandro said firmly. Bring her into my office. Elena's breath caught. She looked down at Mateo, then back at Alejandro. With my son. Alejandro's gaze softened. Of course. The walk into his office felt surreal. It was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, a mahogany desk, shelves lined with books and awards. Alejandro gestured for her to sit. Mateo perched beside her, still clutching his crayons. Elena tried to steady her voice. I'm sorry, sir. I know this isn't how interviews are supposed to go. You don't need to apologize, Alejandro interrupted gently. He leaned against his desk, arms folded. Tell me about yourself, Ms. Rivera. Not just your resume. Tell me why you want this job. Elena swallowed hard. For the first time that day, someone was actually asking. She took a deep breath. I've worked since I was 17, she began. I waited tables, cleaned houses, anything to provide for myself. 3 years ago, my husband left, before Mateo was even born. Since then, it's been just the two of us. I've done my best, but temporary jobs aren't enough. I want stability. I want to show my son that hard work pays off. And I want to prove that being a mother doesn't make me less capable, it makes me stronger. Her voice trembled, but she kept her chin up. Alejandro studied her closely, his expression unreadable. For a moment, silence lingered, broken only by the sound of Mateo scratching crayons across paper. Finally, Alejandro spoke. You know, Ms. Rivera, I was raised by a single mother too. Elena blinked, startled. She worked 3 jobs, sacrificed everything. People underestimated her, but she built the foundation that allowed me to stand here today. His gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. Don't let anyone make you feel less for bringing your son. That boy is your strength, not your weakness. Elena's throat tightened. She bit her lip, trying not to cry. Alejandro straightened, walking around his desk. I'll be blunt. This company doesn't need more people who fit a perfect mold. It needs people with resilience. People who understand sacrifice. People like you. Her heart pounded. Are you saying I got the job? Alejandro smiled faintly. I'm saying you deserve the chance to prove yourself. Starting tomorrow. Elena gasped. She couldn't breathe for a second, couldn't process the words. Mateo tugged on her sleeve, whispering, Mama, does that mean you got it? She turned to him, tears spilling now, and nodded. Yes, Carino, I got it. Alejandro watched the scene quietly, a flicker of something unspoken crossing his face. He had made his decision in an instant, but as he looked at Elena, her determination, her grace even under humiliation, he wondered if fate had just placed something in his path he wasn't expecting. And as for Elena, she walked out of that office holding her son's hand, her heart racing not just with relief, but with a strange, unfamiliar spark of hope. The next morning, Elena stood outside the shimmering glass doors of Rodriguez Enterprises, her palms slick with sweat despite the cool morning breeze. Mateo had begged to come with her again, but she had arranged for her elderly neighbor, Senora Vega, to watch him while she worked. For once, she felt like she was moving forward, one step closer to the life she had promised her son. She took a deep breath and entered. The same receptionist who had sneered at her yesterday glanced up, her expression quickly shifting into a forced smile. Word had clearly spread that Alejandro Rodriguez himself had hired the new assistant. Suddenly, people who had dismissed her looked at her with thinly veiled curiosity and envy. First day trials. Elena was shown to her desk right outside Alejandro's corner office. It was a spacious cubicle, with a new computer and an immaculate stack of files waiting. She smoothed her thrift store blouse, sat down, and tried to steady her nerves. By mid-morning, the HR director, Ortega, stopped by. Her lips were pressed into a thin line as she looked Elena over. Since you were hired under unusual circumstances, Ortega said coolly, I expect you'll work twice as hard to prove yourself. This company does not run on sympathy. I understand, Elena replied, her voice steady. She had endured worse than disdainful words. Tasks came flooding in, scheduling meetings, answering calls, typing memos at lightning speed. Elena worked tirelessly, determined not to make a single mistake. By lunch, her fingers ached, but she had completed everything Ortega had assigned. Still, whispers lingered. She heard colleagues muttering behind her back. She only got the job because the boss felt sorry for her. Single moms are always trouble. Let's see how long she lasts. Each word stung, but Elena lifted her chin. You're doing this for Mateo, she reminded herself. Let them talk. An unexpected alley. That afternoon, Alejandro emerged from his office. He glanced at Elena's neatly organized desk and the mountain of completed work. Ms. Rivera, he said, his voice calm but commanding, join me in the conference room. She followed nervously, carrying her notepad. Inside, the room buzzed with senior executives discussing an upcoming development project. Elena slipped into a chair, unnoticed by most, until Alejandro introduced her. This is Elena Rivera, my new executive assistant, he announced. She'll be supporting all project logistics moving forward. A ripple of surprise went through the room. Ortega's eyes narrowed, clearly unhappy with Alejandro's confidence in someone so new. But Alejandro continued, unfazed, assigning Elena tasks as if she had always been part of the team. Elena took notes, her pen flying across the page. She was terrified of missing something, but when Alejandro asked her to summarize key points at the end, she did so flawlessly. For the first time, several executives nodded in approval. After the meeting, Alejandro lingered behind as others filed out. He turned to her. You did well, today. Elena's cheeks warmed. Thank you. I didn't want to disappoint you. His gaze softened. You won't. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, and for the record, you don't need to prove yourself to anyone here. You earned your place. Those words lit a quiet fire in her chest. She wasn't sure if he realized just how much they meant. Whispers and wounds. Over the next few weeks, Elena settled into her role. Her days were long, but she thrived in the rhythm of work. Each evening, she returned home exhausted but proud, greeted by Mateo's hugs and endless questions about Mr. Rodriguez. Yet, beneath her progress, tension simmered. Ortega seemed determined to undermine her. Files would go missing from Elena's desk, deadlines would be moved without her knowledge, and rumors swirled louder than ever. One afternoon, Elena overheard two coworkers whispering in the break room. She's just using her kid to get sympathy. You think the boss doesn't see through it? Please, he's probably keeping her around for other reasons. Their cruel laughter stabbed her like knives. She fled to the restroom, gripping the sink, fighting tears. They don't know me. They don't know the nights I've gone hungry so Mateo could eat. They don't know the battles I've fought just to stand here today. When she returned to her desk, Alejandro was waiting outside his office, his brow furrowed. Everything all right? Yes, she lied quickly. But his piercing gaze lingered. He seemed unconvinced, yet he didn't press. Instead, he handed her a folder. I need you to prepare these reports by morning. Think you can manage? She nodded. Of course. And she did, working late into the night after tucking Mateo into bed, her determination stronger than the venom of gossip. The turning point. One rainy Thursday evening, Elena was the last to leave. She had just shut down her computer when she heard voices in Alejandro's office. The door was ajar, and Ortega's sharp tone carried out. Hiring her was a mistake, Ortega said. She's a distraction. Employees talk about her constantly. It undermines your leadership. Alejandro's voice was calm but firm. What undermines leadership, Ms. Ortega, is allowing prejudice to dictate decisions. Elena has done her job with excellence. That's all that matters. You can't be objective about her, Ortega snapped. Everyone sees it, the way you look at her. Enough. His voice cut through the air, final and unyielding. If this company has no place for someone like Elena Rivera, then it has no place for the values I built it on. Elena froze. Heat rushed to her cheeks. Did he mean what she thought he meant? She stepped back quietly, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping, but her heart raced wildly. The next day, Ortega's demeanor was icier than ever, but she didn't speak to Elena again. A night of truth. Weeks turned into months. Elena's confidence grew. Mateo adored visiting the office occasionally, charming everyone with his bright smile, everyone except Ortega, who avoided him like the plague. One evening, a company gala was announced. Alejandro insisted Elena attend, saying it was part of her role. She nearly refused, Her only dress was a faded navy thing she had worn to her cousin's wedding years ago, but Alejandro had anticipated that. The morning of the gala, a box appeared on her desk, inside a flowing emerald gown and matching heels. Her breath caught at the note attached, "For the assistant who outshines them all, AR." At the gala, Elena felt every eye on her as she entered. Whispers filled the air, but for once, she didn't shrink from them. Alejandro crossed the room immediately, offering his arm. "You look radiant," he murmured. Her cheeks flushed. "This feels like a dream." He leaned closer. "Then let's make sure you don't wake up just yet." They danced beneath crystal chandeliers, the world fading until it was just the two of them. For the first time in years, Elena allowed herself to feel something beyond survival, something like joy, maybe even love. But reality intruded when she overheard Ortega hissing to another executive. "See, I told you, she's wrapped him around her finger. She's nothing but a gold digger with a child as bait." Elena's chest tightened. She pulled away from Alejandro, murmuring that she needed air. Outside on the terrace, tears blurred her vision. Moments later, Alejandro joined her. "What's wrong?" She shook her head. "I can't do this. People think, they think I'm using you. That I don't belong here." He stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Let them think what they want. I know who you are, Elena. I see your strength, your sacrifices. And he hesitated, searching her eyes. "I care about you, more than I should, perhaps. But I won't hide it." Her breath caught. For so long, she had carried the weight of rejection, of being less than. Now here was a man who saw her worth, not despite her struggles, but because of them. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time, they weren't from shame. She whispered, "I care about you too." Alejandro reached out, brushing a tear away with his thumb. "Then don't let their voices drown out ours." In that moment, beneath the city lights, Elena realized her life had changed forever. She was no longer just a struggling single mother fighting for scraps of dignity. She was a woman who had earned her place, in her work, in her son's future, and perhaps, in Alejandro's heart. And as he pulled her gently into his arms, Elena knew that sometimes rejection is only the beginning of a far greater story, one of resilience, hope, and unexpected love.